Here is a chapter from FENELON entitled Mortification and Recollection. The substance of it is from a letter written to a member of the court, possibly Madame Maintenon, who was the mistress and later wife of King Louis XIV. We can presume that in the background there is a burden of social obligation and interaction that is taking its toll on her. We do not need to make a rule, nor always to follow the spirit of mortification and recollection withdrawing us from social relationships, nor always to pursue our zeal to lead others to God. Then what do we need? To divide ourselves between these two duties, so as not to neglect our needs while devoting ourselves to those of others, and not to neglect the needs of others while being engrossed in our own. The rule for finding the right balance depends on the inner and outer state of each person, and we should not be able to make a general rule for what depends on the particular circumstances of each person. We must measure ourselves by our weakness, by our need to guard ourselves, by our inner compunction, by the signs of providence in exterior things, by the time we have to spend, and by the state of our health. So it is right to begin with the needs of the mind and body, and to reserve enough hours for both, on the advice of a pious and experienced person. For the rest of the time, we must still examine thoroughly the duties of the place in which we are, the real good which can be done there, and that which God gives for our success there, without giving ourselves up to a blind zeal. Let us come to examples. It is not right to stay with a person to whom we could be of no use, when we could be meeting others productively, at least if we have not any debt, such as relationship, very old friendship, or courtesy, which obligates us to stay with the first person. Otherwise, we should get rid of him, after having done what is proper to treat him honorably. The argument of mortifying self ought not to apply in these cases. We will find enough to mortify ourselves by entertaining, contrary to our taste, the people whom we cannot get rid of, and by being tied down to all our real duties. When you are at Saint-Cyr, you must neither be sociable nor withdraw for self-centered motives. But it is enough to do simply whichever you believe to be the best, and the most in conformity to God's plan, even though self-interest be mingled with it. Whatever we can do, that will slide in everywhere. We must not think about it and always go on without stopping. I should think that when you are at Saint-Cyr, you ought to rest your body, refresh your mind, and recollect it before God the most you can. You are so annoyed, so harassed, and so wearied at Versailles that you have great need at Saint-Cyr of a free solitude which will feed your inner life. I should not, however, want you to fail to meet the pressing needs of the house, but only do yourself what is impossible to have done by others. I should rather have you suffer less and love more. Seek in church a posture which does not strain your delicate health, and which does not prevent you from being recollected, provided that this posture is in no way immodest, or that the public does not see it. You will always have enough other mortifications in your condition. Neither God nor men will let you escape them. So refresh yourself, feel at liberty, and think only of nourishing your heart to be in a better state to suffer what is to follow. I have no doubts about your obligation to avoid everything which you have found affects your health, like the sun, the wind, certain foods, etc. This care of your health will doubtless spare you some suffering, but that is only going to sustain you, not to spoil you. Besides, this regime does not demand great delicacies and the enjoyment of luxuries. On the contrary, it demands a sober, simple conduct, and consequently mortified in every detail. Nothing is more false and more indiscreet than always to want to choose what mortifies us in everything. By this rule, a person would soon ruin his health, his business, his reputation, his relations with his relatives and friends, in fact, every good work which Providence gives him. Your eagerness to mortify yourself should never turn you from solitude, nor tear you away from external affairs. You must show yourself and hide yourself in turn, and speak and be still. God has not placed you under a bushel, but under a candlestick, so that you may light all those who are in the house. So you must shine in the eyes of the world, although your self-love may take satisfaction in this state in spite of yourself. But you ought to reserve hours for reading, prayer, and resting your body and mind in the presence of God. Do not anticipate crosses. You would perhaps seek some which God would not want to give you, and which would be incompatible with his plans for you. But embrace unhesitatingly all those which his hand offers you every moment. There is a providence for crosses, as for the necessities of life. It is the daily bread which feeds the soul, and which God never fails to distribute to us. If you were in a more free state, more serene, more unhampered, you would have more to fear in too soft a life. But yours will always have its bitternesses while you are faithful. I beg you, urgently, to stay in peace in this right and simple conduct. In depriving yourself of this liberty by straining after far-fetched mortifications, you would lose those which God is jealous of preparing for you himself, and you would harm yourself under the pretext of advancing. Be free, gay, simple, a child, but be a sturdy child who fears nothing, who speaks out frankly, who lets herself be led, who is carried in the arms. In a word, one who knows nothing, can do nothing, can anticipate and change nothing, but who has a freedom and a strength forbidden to the great. This childhood baffles the wise, and God himself speaks by the mouth of such children.